Hello and welcome to Dream Engines, a brand new game that's coming to Steam where you control and build a city, harvesting resources from across the map and using automation to refine these resources into more useful products, whilst defending your population from swarms of nightmarish enemies. The game does have a lot of promise, but without doubt it does also have a fair few things that niggle at me. So today we're going to see if this game's worth checking out whilst we're waiting for update 5. So let's get into it. Finding ourselves on the start screen, you can immediately get a sense for the world of the game. The music's great and a very quirky Don't Starve or Nightmare Before Christmas kind of feel comes with it. And though the art style is different, it does have its similarities. Creating a new game, we have lots of options to choose from, starting with our own tribes, which are unlocked through playing the game. I currently only have one tribe available, but depending on the tribe you select, you'll have different buffs and cons available to you. Having chosen the tribe, we can then choose the difficulty and whether or not we want to play with the tutorial. There isn't a story or campaign per se that we follow, however, this may change at a later date. So currently the intent is to last as long as possible. I highly recommend starting off on the easier difficulties before even attempting Iron Man, as there's a fair amount to take on board. And starting the game, we have a world map we find ourselves in, which is randomized, which has a select amount of resources that we can explore around the map by using our avatar. Now this avatar has the ability to build up the city, harvest resources and destroy enemies. So from the get-go you'll find yourself balancing between exploring, developing and defending your city. A really cool concept to the city builder is the ability to launch the city and fly to a new area. We can do this by clicking the takeoff sign above, and any buildings within the city plate will be taken with us. However, we do need to be aware of fuel, which can be only manufactured later on in the research tree. And yes, there's a lot of research, but we'll have to also consider weight. If our city is too heavy, we won't be able to take off. But don't worry, as you research more technologies, you'll unlock the ability to build further balloons to decrease the weight of your city at the cost of fuel. As with all city builders, the game is about the careful management of resources and time. As the later you get into the game, the larger and more powerful swarms will come. But don't worry, this will be reset when you travel to a new map, which will have new resources. Starting off, we build a house for our population, and once done, we can transport food to the houses using a conveyor belt. Now these can be dragged into any part of the building, which I like as it gives us a lot more freedom as to our approach to building. Later on, however, I would argue that the automation options in the game are relatively limited from what we've seen so far. For me, this is a negative. I love having the complexity of multiple things to construct and varied complexity throughout. That being said, I'm sure that the further you get into the game, I'm currently sitting at around 10 hours, the more complicated recipes will become. Having set up a few houses for new people to join us, we'll also need to consider food and power, but in order to do that, we'll also need to produce bloodwood planks. This is the first building resource available to us. This is done by exploring bloodwood nodes and activating them for harvest. You can then drag and drop the conveyor, like we did before, to the wood warpers and then send those resources to our city core. Once we've done that, we can use the wood to build farms, food factories and power plants for our town. As the city grows, we'll also have to consider flux, which is what we use for building, and as our city's production increases, so will our need for a larger population, as our workers are dictated by our housing. This is fun for early game, but quickly wears off as the game becomes progressively more monotonous. This isn't to say it's a bad game, but to me it does become noticeably grindy, especially considering the enemies. As they grow stronger, you'll find yourself spending more time trying to protect your city rather than developing it. This is in part due to the swarm mechanics, but also due to the resource nodes. They halve after they've produced a certain amount, so it quickly becomes more important to move the city than to continue growing your economy. This is a nice way to push you to travel to a new map, but I find the later into the game I get, the more grindy this feels. That being said, to make life easier, we do have the ability to craft new items for our character, whether that's armor or weapons or little utility options. It's a nice mechanic, and paired alongside the ability to upgrade your infrastructure, it does make life easier, but does not hugely sway my particular interest in the game. As our city grows, we'll need to seek out new resources available on only some maps, and we'll also have to target larger, more difficult enemies. These can be countered by upgrading our turrets and creating bottlenecks, but this will only last so long, and if the enemy gets inside the gates, they'll make quick work of everything you've worked for, so always keep an eye on the raid alerts. Looking at the automation aspect of the game once again, along with the basic materials, we can go on to upgrade buildings to produce more higher tier resources. These require combining two resources such as starwood, which combines bloodwood with tar. We do not have extensive conveyor options, so in order to add two different resources, just drag the belt through one another. It works easily enough, but I feel it touches on something that could have been given a lot more attention. The furthest I've managed to get into the game is producing fuel. I'd say it's about 60% of the research tree completed, and found the game difficult to continue with. This was due to at the time reaching copper, but being unable to harvest a copper node from a bug that I had. This meant that I couldn't create fuel, which in turn led to my very quick demise. This was a painful mistake when I realized that I was playing on Iron Man mode and couldn't reset the save. Although to be fair, looking over the research tree, though I can see harvesters for everything else, I do not see a harvester available for copper, so perhaps this was just overlooked by the developers and hasn't been added yet, but something that I hope is resolved soon. So what can I say? Summing up the game, it's a nice little game to tie us over for the time being. If you enjoy the idea of a wave defense like Factorio with lesser automation options and the necessity to continuously relocate your city, then this could be a great game for you, especially if you're into the added roleplay elements of upgrading your infrastructure or character. But for me, this game becomes old fast, with the main focus defending against hordes of enemies, and the game does have its nuances, and certainly feels like a full game, but it's just not something that I can see myself spending more than, I'd say, maybe 20 hours playing. If you choose to get the game though, do let me know your thoughts on it. How long have you played it? Are you really enjoying it? Let me know in the comments section below, but thank you so much for watching this, and thank you so much to our amazing supporters, most notably our Solar Eclipse patrons, the Calamity and Cerebral Tag, as well as our Lunar Eclipse patrons, Dixie Chris and James Irwin, as well as our Blood Moon of the Day, Kareev Johnny. Anyway guys, until next time, as always, ciao for now.